What a view we have at the Fisherman's Bastion in Budapest, actually in the ancient city of Buda. But looking over the Danube as we are, you can imagine yourself as a soldier in the Roman legion, because here was a military base of the Roman Empire that guarded the northwest frontier of the empire. The Danube was the limit of the Roman Empire, the limit that was established under the emperors Trajan and Hadrian. And limit, or limes as it was called, was the fortified line of the Roman Empire. So when we stand here, we are on the Roman imperial side, and the legionnaire would have looked across the Danube to the Germanic lands, the Germanic tribes that were up against the empire, and that eventually in the 5th century AD crossed the Danube, defeated the Romans in various battles, and eventually conquered Rome and ended the Western Roman Empire. So this gorgeous river today and this historic place of Buda, the ancient city that was merged with Pest on the other side of the Danube in the late 19th century, is a very remarkable site. It's defined by its geography. The Danube is core, of course, to the geography of this place and to the history of this place. And the Danube is absolutely core to the history of Europe. It is the largest river of Western Europe, nearly 3,000 kilometers long. In Europe, it's second only to the length of the Volga River in Russia. And the Danube flows through many of the most important sites of Europe because the great cities were built along the Danube. Actually, the Danube starts in the Black Forest region of Germany and passes through 10 countries. It starts in Germany, it passes through Austria. From Austria, the Danube flows into today's Hungary. From Hungary to Croatia, from Croatia to Serbia, from Serbia to Bulgaria, from Bulgaria to Romania, from Romania to Moldova, and from Moldova to just the edge of Ukraine. So 10 countries and some of the most important cities of Europe and capital cities of Europe. 3 major capitals: Vienna, the capital of the Habsburg Empire and the Holy Roman Empire for centuries; Buda, where we are, and eventually Budapest, the capital of the Kingdom of Hungary; and Belgrade, today the capital of Serbia. There is rich history on the Danube. But I mentioned that this place has 2 core geographic features that are absolutely important to understand. The river is one, and the second is another massive geographical area, another major region, which is the Eurasian steppe region, or the Eurasian grasslands region. Now, that's a region even longer than the Danube because it stretches from Hungary in the far west of this long grassland region and extends all the way to Mongolia and China. This vast steppe or grassland region was the great highway of ancient history. It's in the grasslands that the horse was domesticated and the horse-based civilizations developed, and the great transport corridors over land known to us today as the Silk Roads extended across the vast region from Hungary all the way to today's China. And that vast corridor of the steppe region was also a massive corridor not only of transport and of armies, but of migrations. The grasslands were home to pastoralist nomadic cultures, horse-based cultures on the move. They're too dry for settled farming in most places. And so this was a nomadic civilization depending on its animal husbandry and of course on its remarkable horse breeding and cavalry capacity for conquest. And the Eurasian steppes were the corridor of transport that brought waves and waves of migrants to Europe in repeated waves of conquest and threat to those who were already settled in Europe. When we think about European history, we can start with the fact that the languages of Europe are overwhelmingly Indo-European. What does that mean? Indo-European means that the languages of most of today's Europe originated in the steppe regions of Western Asia, and the peoples from those regions migrated across the steppes into today's Europe and also migrated across the steppes into the Indian subcontinent. And so the Indo-European languages give us today our modern language groups such as the Romance languages or the German languages, but also languages in the Indo-Aryan linguistic family such as Hindi and Punjab. Well, Hungary is at the western edge of that long Eurasian steppe region, and Hungary was therefore at the receiving end of waves and waves of nomadic, horse-based tribes and peoples who came to migrate and who came for conquest. Now, the Hungarian people today are associated with the Magyars. That's a group also that arrived from the steppe regions. Their original home is not known, but they arrived to this region in the western end of the Eurasian steppes, probably in the 700s or 800s, and were one of the many, many people that migrated. Interestingly, the Magyars did not speak an Indo-European language as so many of the other migrating tribes, but a Uralic language, which is hypothesized without certainty to have come also from the steppe region, but closer to the Urals, and bringing a different language group, which includes today Hungarian and a somewhat distant cousin, Finnish, and two of the non-Indo-European languages of today's Europe. But this region received wave after wave after wave of tribes. Far before the Roman Empire were the Celtic people. Celtic is another Indo-European language. The Celts arrived in Europe in the probably the first or the second millennium BCE. In other words, before the Roman Empire existed. Then came many other tribes, also Turkic tribes like the Avars and the Huns, who arrived for conquest in 300s and 400s AD, with Attila the Hun leading a massive destruction. The Magyars arrived and they conquered their way to control over this region towards the end of the first millennium. The Magyar chieftains accepted Christianity, and by tradition, the nation of the Magyars, Hungary, was established by King Stephen as the first king who accepted Christianity, and his statue is just to my right here, commemorating the foundation of the Hungarian nation almost exactly 1,000 years ago. But Hungary's not had an easy time of it because the Danube is a transport not only for goods and services, but for troops, for armies that come on invasion. The Eurasian steppe is a network not only for trade along the Silk Road, but for invading armies. So this region faced the brunt of many, many invasions. One of the most dramatic after the founding of Hungary 1,000 years ago was the Mongol invasion, which reached Hungary and had devastating effects in this region in 1241. It's said that the Mongols probably would have continued to go west and conquer more of Europe, but the death of the Han led the armies to retreat as they returned because of the Mongol Han's death. But Hungary was not spared that invasion. It faced that terrible incursion. And centuries onward, Hungary continued to face massive invasions, this time from the Turks, and specifically the Ottoman Turkish Empire, which had conquered Constantinople and established its capital of Istanbul at the Black Sea, and then invaded and conquered lands throughout the southwest of Hungary and made its way upriver, up the Danube in decisive battles. And in 1526, one of the most important and devastating battles for this nation took place, the Battle of Mohacs, which is on the Danube River south of here, where the Ottoman troops of Suleiman the Magnificent defeated the Hungarian king and destroyed the army and opened the way to the conquest of a significant part of the Hungarian kingdom. In fact, the Hungarian kingdom was at that point divided in three parts. It was trisected. The northwest part was claimed by the Habsburg Empire, and so it was absorbed into the Habsburg Empire. The central part was occupied by the Ottomans for what would be more than a century, and the eastern part, Transylvania, became a semi-autonomous region, but as vassal to the Ottoman Empire. So 1526, the Battle of Mohacs, really ended the Kingdom of Hungary as an independent kingdom. And it wasn't until the end of the 17th century that the Ottomans were finally pushed out of this region by the combined armies, the Holy League of Christian kingdoms that won the siege of Vienna in 1683 and then went on in several years of war to defeat the Ottomans, finally defeating the Ottomans in 1697 and in 1699 in the Treaty of Karlowitz. The Ottomans abandoned this region. But the Kingdom of Hungary was not restored as an independent kingdom. It became part of the Habsburg lands. So the Kingdom of Hungary was held by the Holy Roman Emperor and the Archduke, ruler of the Habsburg lands. And that was also a long and complex story. But it was not until the 19th century that Hungary regained some measure of autonomy within what became the Austro-Hungarian Empire in 1867, and then with the end of the empire in its defeat in World War I, a Republic of Hungary was established in the end of World War I. Hungary's history did not become any simpler during the 20th century, so it's another part of our story that we will visit.